In 1980, the Catchment Board decided that enough was enough and they were going to devise a new scheme. And the general rule there was that when the flow was low, the effluent would be treated. If the flow was high, then less care would be taken. 3 months passed and one of their investigators resigned as a lack of action for the Catchment Board not prosecuting those who were polluting the river. It seems that, almost 30 years, 40 years later, history is repeating itself. And then, of course, in October 2007, the Horowhenua District Council allowed anywhere between 10,000 and 100,000 litres of raw sewage to go into the river. This is only 3 years ago, and yet I've just read to you a report that's 20, 30 years old talking about the same sorts of issues. So it seems clear to me that the local authorities are not listening to the concerns of the community. In 2006, I came to Palmerston North, and I've had the good fortune in living in different areas of this country whereby it's a right for us to go and enjoy the qualities of a local river. I've lived in Hawke's Bay, I've lived down in Christchurch, and every time it's been very safe for us to enter the river. And I went to do the same with my daughter Molly Rose when I first came into the region and saw the river. And then I talked to a couple of locals and said, is the river safe? And they said, don't go near it with a barge pole. And so that got me thinking and talking to different people around the community. And so as a result of that, we decided to get going a group called Te Rōpū Huirapa and to start organising a Save Our River March, which is the march that we did. There were approximately 500 people. We began from Horizons and we ended up out at Railway Park. That came about also after the Waitarere Environment Care Group, or WECA, fought the decision that allowed Fonterra to dump 8,500 cubic metres of effluent. And of course that decision was made on the back of Fonterra recording a record profit that particular year. What also strikes me about the way in which in particular Horizons operate is that their framework is wrong. I was always led to believe that local council were responsible for protecting the environment, and that's what you would expect. But the framework to me is all out of kilter and is all wrong. I've read the columns that the CEO Michael McCartney puts in the local rag week after week, and he uses the language of threat, of saying that if we want the river cleaned up then it's going to cost us X million, and that cost needs to be met by the community, and so people automatically shy away from being active and wanting to clean up the Manawatu. And yet I'm thinking to myself that we have both industry and farmers who pollute the river who seem to get off scot-free. Horizons never seem to give them the bill and tell them that they must foot it. Instead it seems to fall on the community. So what Horizons is saying to us, as far as I can see, is that we're subsidising their pollution. And why are we doing that? It doesn't make any sense. Also, they seem to give priority over economics and also the ability for local businesses to make a profit. And I think that emphasis is wrong also. They are put there to protect the environment. They are, in this region, the largest protectors of the environment. They are the Kaitiaki. They are where the buck stops, and yet they're sitting on their asses and not doing a hell of a lot about it. Also, what Kaitiaki is about is also about protecting the mauri, or the life source, if you like, of a particular resource, and in this case it's the Manawatu River. Throughout some of the resource consent decisions, if you look at Fonterra, if you look at NZP, Tui Breweries, iwi and Hapu have long fought for recognition of the mauri of the river, and they've said that the mauri is denigrated. Yet when they go to these resource consent hearings, they're constantly questioned by people who know no better, i.e. councillors, as to how a mauri is being effected, and they want tangible grounds in which to dismiss the resource consents. Again, this is ignorance, this is racism at its worst, because they are rubbishing Māori claims the way in which we have measured the pollution or the well-being of a river. And so again, this emphasis needs to change. The RMA is, of course, the legislation in which Horizons operate. And there are two sections of relevance there. Section 7 talks about having regard to kaitiaki when making decisions about resource consents. And Section 8 talks about taking into account the principles of a treaty. Again, iwi and hapu have constantly pulled up Horizons Regional Council about these issues and have illustrated clearly how polluting the river contradicts those principles. Yet again, Horizons do nothing. Nowadays we have the One Plan, and with the One Plan I often wonder if it's just rhetoric that they're spouting off in order to placate those who are up in arms about the health of the river. Of course the verdict's still out, it remains to be seen whether or not this will have any change, but this year's 2010, and as I said before, 4 years ago we did the march, and the call at that time was to get, by this year, all the polluters out of the river. Well, obviously that's not the case. So we need to keep making our voices heard, we need to keep the message consistent and the same, and we need to get people out of the river. Our tipuna had it right when they said, you don't shit and you don't piss where you get food from. Well, they said it more diplomatically than that, my apologies. But that was the message that they had. And so today, 150, 170 years on since the signing of the treaty, we're still doing the same. We don't seem to have taken that lesson into consideration. One thing also that became apparent to me as a result of writing the chapter was that one problem regarding the pollution of the Manawatu has replaced another problem. In the past, I talked about the fish kills, and I said that it was due to a lack of oxygen that was causing, or that was the effects of pollution. These days what we are having is the river being nutrient rich, and so with them trying to attempt to address issues about the lack of oxygen, they've also created another issue around pollution. Also coming up, of course, are the elections for the local body for Horizons, and I think that that's the biggest message that we can send those people at the council. If we don't like what we're doing, if we don't like what they're doing, if we don't like what they're saying, then we have the opportunity to boot the bastards out. And I encourage each and every one of you to become educated and informed when it comes to election time, to looking at their track record, and to at the very least being putting someone else in their place who will do something about the river. This has gone on far too long, and unless we act now, all we're doing is leaving a river for the worst for our future generations. Kia ora koutou katoa.